Morning, Bay Life. Are you guys awake this morning? You look like it. I've got good news for you. Mark's going to be back next week. Nobody applaud. Nobody applaud. You can applaud inside, but not out loud to where I can hear it. For those of you who know me and don't, redundant, I guess, for those who do, I'm John Weaver, and married to a beautiful lady. Her name is Verdetta. And I have two wonderful boys, Caleb, who is 6 years old, and Joshua is 18 months old. And I must say, Christmas was a little different this year with an 18-month-old. We didn't put the breakable ornaments on the tree, for example, because we knew they would be broken. Anyway, enough about me. I'd love to get to know more of you better over time. I'd love to even have lunch. I do that occasionally, go to lunch. But today, let's just get right into what I believe that God wants to challenge us with. And I want you to go with me just for a minute. Imagine, guys or girls, that you were recently watching a bowl game. Maybe it was Iron Chef or maybe your favorite TV show, not to exclude anyone. But you're right into the game or you're right into the program and you're entrenched. You're in tune with what's going on and curious about what the next big thing's going to be or the play's going to be, the key ingredient to the whatever, Iron Chef. And the doorbell rings. And you're involved in what you're watching, and you really don't want to get up to see who's at the door, but you know that whoever it is knows you're home. I mean, the cars are in the driveway. The TV's up loud. Maybe you can hear some kids running around in the background. So begrudgingly, you get up. And you go to the door and you answer the door. And it's a familiar face, someone that you know. It's your neighbor. And your neighbor says something like this. Your neighbor at the door says, you know what, I really haven't had a chance to go grocery shopping this week, and I'm watching the game too. I see that you have that on, and I was wondering, would you mind if I go through your fridge to see if there's anything in there I might want to eat? What are you thinking to yourself right about that time? You're probably looking over their shoulder, looking for the hidden camera, because certainly you must be on some practical joke show. I mean, that just doesn't happen, right? I mean, if we're honest, isn't the refrigerator one of the most sacred places in our home? I mean, not just anyone can go in your fridge, is that right? Another scenario, go with me for a minute. You're watching the bowl game or Iron Chef or whatever the case may be, and you actually invite friends over to join you for the show. You tell everyone in advance, I'm going to be cooking burgers. If you want to bring a side, by all means do that. A drink maybe. Feel free to bring that. So you're there, your guests arrive, you cook the burgers, you come in, and you announce, the burgers are done, everything's ready, let's eat. So you kind of stand off to the side and people are starting to fix their plate. And you notice, let's just say Sam is in your fridge. I mean, he is deep in your fridge. And you say, Sam, what could you possibly need, man? Everything is out on the counter. Is there something I can get for you? And Sam says, you know what? I knew we were having burgers, but I'm just not really in the mood for a burger. I mean, he's like arm length in, moving things around, kind of seeing what's there or what's growing maybe in the back of your fridge. And you're thinking to yourself, this is weird. This just doesn't happen, right? Or maybe you're here this morning and you say, that's not so weird. Well, let me kind of clue you in. If you're the kind of person that goes in people's homes and without being asked or given permission to do so, you're just kind of fumbling in their cold box, you're weird. All right? Let's just get that straight right up front. You're weird. And you came to church this morning, you say, first of all, Mark's not here. Check number one. Secondly, we're talking about refrigerators and being able to go into them. I'm not really sure where this is going. Just hang with me, okay? It's not about refrigerators, but the access that we have to people's refrigerators and the access that they have to our refrigerators is an indication of the level of relationship that we have with those people. When I was preparing for this, I started thinking of some of the questions. Who in your life, besides family members, have access to your refrigerator? Who in your life, besides family members, are you able to freely go in their refrigerator? Well, what type of a relationship does it take? What level of relationship does it take to be able to have access to each other's cold food? I mean, it's got to be some great access, right? I mean, you just can't go in people's refrigerators. Well, here's the deal. As we start comparing cultures past to our culture today, I was talking recently with my grandmother, and this past year, she turned 85 years old. So in June, she'll turn 86, and she grew up in South Florida in the Naples area, and I was asking her, I call her Granny. She's my granny. I said, Granny, when you were a young girl, what was it like in terms of being connected? I mean, really connected with other people in your community. She said, first of all, the school that I went to, there was approximately 100 students, and everybody knew everybody. Now, granted, she's got a little advantage on us then, 100. I mean, today you go to any of the local high schools around here, and you're talking thousands, right? So, besides the point, she knew everybody. Not only did the students know everybody, but all the families in the community knew everybody. You couldn't do anything in town because somebody would see you and report to your parents before you ever got home. And when she was a young girl, it wasn't so much that you drive down Kingsway and you see this church and that church and all the different flavors that we have these days. Most of the people in her community were believers, Christ followers, and they would get together on a regular basis and fellowship and eat together and hang out and just do life together. And they would have these different itinerant preachers and speakers that would come through and speak to them. But what she was getting at is the community was connected. However, today, comparatively speaking, we're socially isolated. We, as a culture, have become the most socially isolated generation of all times. I describe it this way. We have gone from a front porch society to a garage door society. Years ago, the money and the architecture and the planning and building a building would certainly have a front porch. And people would hang out on the front porch. One of the reasons, of course, if you're an air conditioner man or lady, is because they didn't really have so much of that central air stuff that we experience today. But they would hang out on their porches, and as neighbors and people in the community would come by or walk by, they would be invited to come up, and they would spend time together, and they would fellowship, and they would get to know each other. And as a result, there was a social connectedness that we don't experience today. Instead, we have these little mechanisms in our car, and they're called garage door openers, right? And you leave your house in the morning off to your workplace out of your garage. And many of us, even the workplaces that we work at, are in cubicles or offices, and we're very limited in the social interaction that we have with other people. And if anything, it's through email or teleconference, and we're really not kind of doing life together with the people that we do our days with on our jobs. And at the end of the day, in our isolation, we get in our car and we come onto our road, and it's almost like a personal kind of a competition to see how far away from your house before your garage door will open with your garage door opener. It's like, man, the frequency or whatever is working really good today. I got another house and a half out of that one. And you pull into your garage, and if you get out at all to look, it's only to see if you're in the garage far enough before you close the door down again. And the money that used to go and the architecture that used to go towards front porches now goes towards walk-in closets. It goes towards home offices. It goes towards entertainment centers, all within the confines of our house. Let me ask you a question. How many of your neighbors do you know? I mean, do you really know? And I'm talking, just so you know, to myself this morning as well. I have 2 neighbors that I know first and last names. I have a couple more neighbors that I know we're like on a first name basis. But there's other neighbors, regrettably, after living in my home for 4.5 years, that I just don't know. And sometimes, I don't know if you're like me, I have the tendency to think, what's wrong with them? But what's wrong with me? What have I done to kind of extend that olive branch out to build a relationship with those people? So what's wrong with me? What's wrong with us as a culture? Why are we so socially isolated? Well, this wasn't an idea that I came up with on my own about the whole refrigerator thing, but there's an author. His name is Dr. Will Miller. And go figure, the title of the book is Refrigerator Rights. It's a great book. I would recommend you read it sometime. But Dr. Miller, he talks about 3 things in our culture that contribute to our social isolation. So this morning, as you're listening, and you're kind of seeing what God has to say to us, evaluate what are these things that possibly would contribute to your social isolation. One of those, or the first thing that he talks about as being a contributor to our social isolation, is our increased mobility.